passionate, driven, enthusiastic, euphoric. This is who we are as entrepreneurs. But how we leverage these incredible attributes to dream and build businesses that scale and grow is what this podcast is all about. Hello, I'm attorneypreneur Josh Brown, and welcome to Franchise Euphoria. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Franchise Euphoria. Today, I am thrilled to have Art Coley Jr. on the show. Art is a franchise executive and small business specialist. He has spent 20 plus years in franchising and small business endeavors. He is the former CEO of a top 200 franchise brand called Alpha Graphics and a specialist at identifying challenges and implementing turnaround plans for franchises and small business. Hello, Art, and welcome to the show.
Hello, Josh, and thank you for having me on today. It's an honor.
Oh, well, it's great to have you. I mean, you've got such a great history in franchising, and you spent 20 years in this wacky world of franchising and small business ventures, and you've survived to tell about it.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. We are over the phone here, so there's some scars and stuff that you can't see. But yeah, no, it's. I tell you what, I'm so blessed, and I've gotten to learn and work with some just great people, and yeah, I'm real fortunate for it. I'm a franchising nut. I love franchising. I think it's the greatest invention for small business because small business, let's face it, is just tough to begin with. And when the whole idea of business format franchising came around, it really opened the door to more and more people to pursue and be able to live their, live the American dream and go after their goals through small business ownership. So, yeah, I'm pretty big on franchising. I think it's a great thing for our country and for individuals.
Well, so tell me, did you start in franchising, or did you find your way to it after being involved in small business? Because so many people I know and talk to, they find their way to franchising, but they don't necessarily go there at the start.
Well, no. I mean, if you take a room full of franchise, people, on the franchisor side, and you say, I can think of a recent group that I was a session that I was a facilitator for, and I said, by show of hands, how many of you here went to college, said, I want to study this, and then I want to go and make a career in franchising? And we had zero hands of about 120 people in the room go up. And then I said, by a show of hands, how many of you guys just stumbled into it accidentally? And every hand went up in the room, and of course some laughter along with that. No, most of us didn't. Finding franchising, yes, we did find it, and that's probably a nice way to put it. I mean, I was a freelance writer in Houston in my early 20s for a business magazine, and I went out to interview a gentleman named Bud Hatfield, who had founded Quick Copy Printing back in the 60s. And he had built this company to close to 2,000 printing locations in 24 countries. I went out to interview him. A 30-minute interview turned into 4 hours, and 3 months later, I was working for the man. And that's how I got into franchising. Was through a business magazine interview. And for me, what I had realized, having grown up in small business and actually had my first entrepreneurial venture as a 15-year-old with a small hamburger stand in a little town in Central Texas named Temple, Texas. What I had stumbled on in my early 20s, and that with Bud, is I for the first time, we all knew about McDonald's and the franchising, and we think of food, but for the first time, I really had the window open to me about what franchising is really about, and it's about providing systems and a process and bringing predictability to something that oftentimes is described as very unpredictable, and that is, the nature of business. And I was very excited about that. I realized I found an opportunity in a gentleman who could teach me, and so I became his understudy for many years until moving on to the next thing.
Well, that's fascinating. I want to talk about that a little bit, but before I got to ask you, tell me about this hamburger stand.
Yeah, hamburger. Well, at 15, I grew up on the north side of town of Temple, Texas, and we had a great vision. I thought I will revolutionize all of quick service restaurants because we'll do snow cones and hamburgers.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah, and it was a little 18 by 18 building. My dad, my whole family was involved in it. We all worked together to make it work, and that's when one of the things we learned during that phase was the greatest thing about a small family business is the family. Getting to work with your family and have a goal and come about and accomplish that together. And at the same time, the worst thing about a family business is the family. And,
absolutely,
so
absolutely.
You learn all of these dynamics. But at 15, I ran that through high school, and then when I went off to the University of Houston, my mom and dad, my mom really basically took over running the restaurant until I returned at age 25. So, gosh, 7 years later, I came back and took over that restaurant, and really got to go step back into the kitchen and apply what I had learned from being with the franchisor, which was Bud and Quick Copy down in Houston. And so it was really that I consider it kind of getting my PhD in small business and franchising, because we weren't a franchise, but I was applying all of those same principles of having systems and having checklists and from how you attract customers to operations and workflow and how you do financial management and inventory management, approaching it just as if you were a franchise system with 1,000 locations, but we did it with one, and had quite a bit of success. Had 600% growth in sales over a 5-year period. Was named one of the top 50 family-owned restaurants in Texas. We were the Central Texas Restaurant of the Year, and it was. And then we sold that business, and I moved back over to the franchisor side after that. But it was that little restaurant starting at age 15. I didn't realize. So the whole time from the beginning to the end was 18 years of our family owning and running that. And no pun intended, but it really ended up being a little bit of a test kitchen for us to see the changes that a small business owner, powerful changes small business owners can make with their business in a very short period of time. And of course, if you've got a franchise that you're part of, just turn to your franchisor, because probably those systems are all right there in place, and you're just needing to implement them or engage with the franchisor at a deeper level.
Well, so it's interesting when you said a little hamburger stand at 15. I'm thinking like a lemonade stand. I mean, this was a viable business. I mean, this is something that that you turned into a viable business. That's really, really fascinating.
Yeah. Well, it took a lot of help, and we probably made it just because we were too ignorant to know any better. What is that? Just kind of ignorant and bliss. But we just climbed in and rolled up our sleeves, but no, it was, we was open 6 days a week from 11 a.m. in the morning until 10 p.m. at night, and we organized had a staff of about 10 to 15 people that worked in the restaurant, and so there was coordinating inventory, payroll, all of those aspects at a very, very young age.
Well, see, I love that, because it's so funny, because you talk to so many entrepreneurs, and ignorance really is bliss up until you get to a certain age, right? I mean, when you're a young kid and you're growing up and you're a teenager, ignorance truly is bliss. I mean, you're so naive, and you feel like you can conquer the world, and sometimes that's what allows you to do some really cool things. And so I love hearing stories.
Yeah.
I just love hearing stories about that. And it sounds like you implemented really at some point sort of the Michael Gerber E-Myth philosophy of, build your business, run your business as if you're going to replicate it 1,000 times over, even if you're not going to do that.
Boy, I'll tell you, Josh, you hit on a book that every small business owner or every individual thinking about being a small business owner, they should not only read that book once, but they should read it once, go back and read it another 5 times, and then put it underneath their pillow, have it in the car, get it on audio, and listen to it when they're driving around, get the audio, book on tape or book on CD. Michael Gerber and the E-Myth book, probably that along with Bud Hatfield and Quick Copy. So I got to kind of get both worlds of it, the book over here and hearing what I could resonate. Because so many of those stories, right, if you've been in small business, you typically hear that and you resonate with what he's talking about in there, right? I mean, the vast majority of people start their small business or buy a franchise. And by the way, any of your listeners listen to this, there's no guarantee by buying a franchise that you're not going to have all the pain and struggles, and even in some cases failures with small business ownership. And that's a little bit, when we use the word, e-myth, there's a little bit of myth sometimes about what a franchise is going to do for you. A franchisor does not take away the struggles and pains of a small business, of being a small business owner. All the franchisor can do for you, and I say all, this is a big thing, but the hurdle of the challenges that you're going to have with sales and marketing and staffing and location finding and inventory and equipment purchases, right? I mean, all of those struggles that you have in financial management, if the hurdle is 10 feet high as an independent out there alone, a good quality franchisor, and there are some bum franchises out there, but most of the people in franchising are good, hardworking people who are trying to make it better for the franchisee to grow their sales and to make more money and to have better quality of life. A good franchisor just takes that 10-foot hurdle and brings it down to a speed bump. It's still there. You're still going to feel it. You're still going to have a little bit of pain. You're going to have to slow down and be careful getting over it. But they've got a system to where it's not like every time you turn around you're having to climb and jump over a 10-foot hurdle. Instead, it's maybe it's 2 feet, or maybe it's and then some of those are bumps in the road you never even feel, right?
Well, so I love that you say that. I love that you're saying this, because there's a bunch of hogwash statistics out there that I'm always talking about and trying to really put a reality to franchising. Because like you, I love the concept of it, but I love it when it's done the right way. And there's a bunch of statistics out there that I have definitely been disproven, but people still, when they're searching for that opportunity, they go, oh, I can go buy the franchise. I've got a 95% chance of being successful. I mean, no, that you have to run the business. I love that analogy of really taking it down to just a speed bump, because when I talk to people as well, I'm always telling them, you're going to have the same struggles as other people, but it's just going to be easier things are just going to be made slightly easier if you're within that good system, if you've got that brand, if you're able to take advantage of other people's mistakes, sort of riding on their back so that you don't make those same mistakes. But there's still going to be all the challenges of running a business, which we all know is hard work.
It is. It absolutely. You mentioned that I was the former CEO of Alpha Graphics Top 200 brand, and still on and helping Alpha Graphics with that transition to the new CEO. And it was just time for a next chapter for me in my life. But here's the thing, like Alpha Graphics, 40-plus-year-old franchise, top 200 brand, close to 300 locations, $300 million in system-wide sales, quality people, good support structures. The reality is that there's not too much that the team at Alpha Graphics hasn't seen over 40-plus years. I mean, and so when somebody comes into the Alpha Graphics network, what we tell them is that you're going to get the curveballs. You're going to get the stuff that's happened. The difference by being a franchisee is that it's very unlikely something's going to come your way that we haven't seen before. And so if you're out there on your own, and by the way, you can even be a franchisee, and I see this all the time, Josh. Someone signs a franchise agreement, pays initial fees, goes to all the training, has the royalty, has the marketing fund, and then they won't use the franchisor for help, which is like going to the doctor and then wanting to do your own diagnosis and offer your own prescription. It doesn't make any sense. And so you can even be within a franchise network and still be struggling and making it hard with some of these challenges if you're not engaged in working, because it is a partnership. Franchisees are not employees. They're not. Yes, there's the franchise agreement. There's things they, quote, have to do, but you can't make somebody engage and really be in the spirit and attitude of working in that partnership. And so, that's why when people talk about not everyone is right, and your listeners should know that. They say, well, hey, how do I know if I'm right for a franchise? Well, you start pursuing it. You look into those franchisors. I can promise you good franchisors are going to be making sure it's a fit, because they know it's not a fit for everyone. Being a franchisee, the pure entrepreneurial spirit, if somebody is a pure entrepreneur, most of the time they really are not a good franchisee, because they kind of want to do their own thing. They don't want to have systems. They don't want to, let's face it, that's the antithesis of the entrepreneurial spirit, right? I mean, that's how things happen.
Oh, I know. I
Yeah.
was just interviewing somebody who turned their business into a franchise, and so I was talking about that, and we were talking about going through that process, which, and it's funny because for a true entrepreneur, you know, the entrepreneur that creates the business and now is turning into a franchise, that's like pulling their teeth, right? Trying to get them to then say, listen, I know you know how to operate the business, but you got to put all that great stuff in your head onto paper. That's like pulling their teeth. That's the worst thing ever. That's why I truly believe that the best, and this is I guess you could say an overgeneralization, but I think for the most part it would stand, that you've got to be a great operator and a great manager and love those two components of running a business to really have a good chance of being successful in franchising, because you've got to buy in to the underlying business model of the business that you're buying. You can't go, I mean, I've talked to people, and it blows my mind, Art, when people come to me and they're going to sign on and become a franchisee, and they're already talking to me about problems with the system, and I'm going, well, why are you buying it? I mean, maybe you should go do your own thing. I mean, there's nothing stopping you. But it is interesting how that there's many factors that go into being a good franchisee, but certainly being an operator, certainly being a manager, and being able to follow somebody else's instructions and lead are key to that process.
Well, you know, great candidates for franchising. I mean, this isn't a mystery, but people that come out of the military, where there are a lot of systems and process. I mean, these guys, it's all about regimented following instructions, orders, and having process. Because when you don't have that, to the utmost degree in the military, they say when you don't have that, people die, right? I mean, because when you're in battle and war and this and that, we've got to know where it's going. But yet, there's also an element of chaos. There's also an element of chaos in that, to where, process and systems, but at the same time, what do you do that when bullets and bombs are going off around you, right? I mean, and thank goodness you don't have that in a small business ownership, but the analogy certainly is applicable, because there's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of so-called, chaos happening, but yet there's got to be a structure and system. And people coming out of corporate America, let's face it, every big business in America started as a small business. No, IBM didn't start as IBM. Google didn't start as Google. I mean, they all started with one person or a couple people and an idea in a garage or some small space or in a bedroom with, a computer and the internet or whatever. They all started small, and as they got bigger, one of the things that had to happen was corporate governance and systems and process had to be developed along the way. How we're going to hire people, employee handbooks, and all of those things. And so you're right, Josh. The antithesis of an entrepreneur are those professionally managed tools and resources that companies must have to get bigger and to grow, but yet they can't lose that culture and spirit. And those are, that's hard to package that up. It's not always black and white, but it's one that that's what makes small business ownership both frustrating, and it also is what makes it liberating and exciting and can be life-changing for people, both, in a way that having a job in corporate America could never provide.
Yeah, that's so true. So I'm curious, did you sort of learn the ropes of printing through working with Bud and Quick Copy? I mean, did you learn all the various skills that go into it and then come over to Alpha Graphics, or did you kind of work up the corporate ladder with Alpha Graphics after you learned some things and worked with Bud for a few years? Yeah,
I worked with Bud for a few years, and then I resigned from Bud and came back to my hometown of Temple, Texas, and that's where I really got to, like I said, no pun intended, but kind of have a test kitchen with the restaurant.
Yeah.
By applying the E-Myth type Michael Gerber stuff, the franchise systems, and watching that make a difference in the sales growth and profits. Our lives were transformed because we started working on the business versus working in the business. But this is an interesting thing so yes, I've been around printing and the print franchises. I even had a direct mail business in college while I was at the University of Houston. So I've got a lot of real hands-on experience in reality of hands-on experience in this segment of the industry. But here's the thing. Really what happened is that if someone wanted to test my print knowledge and all about the new equipment and all about workflow and everything within an Alphagraphics print business center, the franchisees of Alphagraphics, almost all of them know more about the details of that than I do in terms of the inner workings of that business. Because what I learned at an early age, in 20 plus years from other franchise executives, you absolutely have to know the industry you're in. So I don't want to in any way diminish that fact. If you're going to be a franchise executive of a of a franchise food chain, you've got to understand how that business works. You have to know that.
Yeah.
But what's even more important than that is that you've got to understand how small business works. And you've got to understand how small business works within that industry. Now, so it's not just about putting ink and toner on paper. It's about how is someone a successful small business owner first, and then how do they do it in this industry? So that way, I've worked with children's educational franchises, because Quick Copy was actually part of a holding company that had other brands. So I worked with the Pack and Ship brand. I worked with the women's health franchise. Of course, Quick Copy, Computer Explorers. I was president of Computer Explorers while I was with Bud, and that was about 100 franchise unit franchise offering children's technology. And then I got a call in 2007 about the opportunity at Alphagraphics out in Salt Lake City, Utah, because they were having franchise. Here was a brand. When we talked about you mentioned something about turnaround specialist, or I've had a lot of experience in that. Alphagraphics is an industry-leading brand, best unit economics. A lot of other executives from the other brands privately would say it's the best group of franchisees as a whole of any print franchise group. Very solid group of franchisee partners, but yet in 2007 they were having trouble growing the brand, new locations, independents converting in, and so went to work on that piece. And helping them grow that. But what I'll tell you, the biggest, if one of your listeners is looking at a franchise brand, yes, they want to know the CEO and the executive team understands the industry that they're in. But what's actually more important and often overlooked by candidates looking at a franchise is that, does this person really understand small business? Because that's really what's most important. Do they understand how I build my business as a small business owner and make this work? Because the four things I know every person is looking for when they start a business, when they get off that plane in Salt Lake and they sit down and they meet with us about Alphagraphics or any of the other brands I've been with over the years, they all want better income, they want better lifestyle, they want to have wealth, which is money beyond their income, and they want to build something that has equity in it for the future. They all want those four things. And yet, oftentimes they'll end up so focused on looking at the industries like dry cleaning or convenience hardware trends or printing, or you just pick the industry, that they forget to come back and think, well, okay, is this business and do these people understand really how to help me get there with this particular franchise model? It's a real subtle thing, but it's often overlooked.
Yeah, I think one of the interesting things about Alphagraphics and other print franchises is, and not every franchise can say this, but I think there actually is another advantage going the franchise route if you're the right person for it, and that is when you're part of like an Alphagraphics team. I mean, you guys have an advantage of R&D, the research and development, where we're in such a changing world right now with everything digital going on. I think there's a real advantage on the franchise side versus the mom and pop print shop, where the franchisee gets to take advantage of the fact that at corporate, the franchisor, I mean, you guys are sitting there. Part of your role, part of what you're doing is trying to say, okay, what's the next technology coming through? What are the next kind of printers we got to look at? And those are the kinds of things that most mom and pops just don't have the time to do. They're just busy working in their business all the time. So I think I've seen that. And I think that's a real advantage in the printing franchise concepts. I'm curious, do you agree with that?
Absolutely. I think it should. Any good franchisor, regardless of the industry, should be doing it because technology and what's happening, the wheel of change in all of business, regardless of the industry, is turning so much faster than it was 5, 10, certainly 20 plus years ago. And it's impossible for a small independent business owner today to just keep up with all of that and all that's required to go with it. And so when you become part of a network, absolutely, Josh, a good franchisor has got to be looking at all of that, you know, in all areas, from how technology and changes are affecting sales and marketing and operations and financial management, every bit of that, not to mention purchasing power, best practices and training modules and all of that customized and suited, like it fits like a glove for that industry and your business in that industry. It's let's face it, it is hard to be a small business owner out there and you're not part of some kind of group, whether that's a co-op or a franchise, or even if it's just a group of independents that have gotten together unofficially within some kind of advisory board. The fact is, it's like that saying, the only successful person that ever did anything alone is the self-made failure.
And so true,
it's the Lone Ranger mentality in small business ownership today, even though it sometimes goes with it, right? I'm out there, I'm doing it on my quote own, I'm riding it to listen to that. That's actually a very dangerous and risky place to be. If you're sitting there today doing it on your own, chances are that's not paying you the dividends, and you're not being able to check the box for the life goals that you originally had when you went into small business ownership. That's what I found.
Yeah, I mean, you're not going to get very far, and I think, I mean, we're all riding the coattails of other people at some point in time, and it's, you know, I can relate this to myself with my practice. I can relate it to any small business. Is that, you know, I know people out there, and I know you do too, who, you know, they might run their own sort of solo deal, and they're just happy where they are, and they don't want to grow. They don't want to, you know, get to that next level, and that's fine. I just know for myself and for many people, I'm just not wired that way. And you reach a certain point where you can't grow, you can't get to that next level without having that proper mentorship, without having those people, those trusted advisors to bounce things off of, whether it's through an association, whether it's through, like, you know, outside advisory boards or whatever the case may be. I mean, we all need that, and it's not a sign of weakness to go after that. It's actually a sign of strength and maturity to reach out to people, but to do it in a way where you're not just looking for somebody else to tell you their answer, but you're really looking to work through all of the problems. And I think that's another advantage of a good franchise system, is you do have those other, as a franchisee, you do have those other franchisees to talk to. And hopefully you do have the franchisors to work with. And so I just think there's all those good things that, again, the reason why I love the model so much, one of the reasons why I love it so much, and, you know, especially it's kind of interesting with Alpha Graphics and with the printing model, is that it is changing so much. I mean, you know, you look at a Vista print, right? I mean, there's an Alpha Graphics here in Carmel, Indiana, right where I'm at, and I've actually used them, and they're fantastic. I know the owner, and everything was great. But sometimes I just go to myself, I go, God, how do you compete with like a Vistaprint, right? That's going to print you 1,000 business cards for $5 or whatever it is. And I think that's a changing. I think that changes. That's the kind of disruptor that subtly will change the model of an Alpha Graphics, because at the end of the day, you probably can't compete with that one aspect.
Yeah, well, I tell you what, our franchisee right there, I believe it's Michael Kyle, and he's doing a thank you, first of all, Josh, for the business. We appreciate you using.
He's great. He's great.
Alpha Graphics, and you know, you hit on something there that is. See, the thing is, in a franchise, right, there's always somebody that's going to be doing something better than you in some area. And the neat thing is, if you're able to set your ego to the side, if you're, you know, and you talked about there being strength in the fact of understanding there's power and wisdom and understanding I can't do it alone. You know, I've got 3 boys. My oldest is at Mary Hardin Baylor here in Central Texas. He's a junior, and I got a freshman at the University of Houston and one about to go into high school. And, you know, for the 2 that have gone off, one of the things that as a dad, you know, I hope and pray for is that they can find those mentors and those people in their life, because they're all out there, and there's people that want to help other people. You just have to be looking and willing for that. and that those people come into their lives and that they allow them and seek them out, because the answers and the help and the guidance and the teachers are all there. And I know that because, man, I was a kid in my early 20s, and I went out to interview an 80-something-year-old gentleman named Bud, and I realized the student, what is that? When the student's ready, the teacher arrives.
Yes,
And I realized I had walked into the presence of a teacher and Bud, and he took me under his wings, and I started work for him, and we didn't know what job I was going to have, and we didn't know how much, I didn't even know the money that I was going to be making. I just knew this was a guy I had to work for, and I told him, I said, I'm showing up on this day at your office. And if I'm going to be mowing the lawn, then give me a lawnmower, but you just got to give me a couple hours each week just to ask you questions and learn, because I had by that time I'd had the struggles of the restaurant. I had the struggles of the direct mail company, which was a complete failure when in college. I mean, there's a lot of money in direct mail. About $50,000 of it is mine. It felt like $3 million at that time, because it was more than I even had, and I owed bankers and I owed printers and mailing houses and all of this stuff, and I just didn't want to do it over and over again. I didn't want to be the guy that was in his 40s and it just had failure after failure and after failure because I was too hard-headed to just say, man, I need some help. And see, that's what franchising is about. Your people listening to your show, whether they're looking at Alpha Graphics or any other franchise, it's really about saying, you know what, I want to succeed and be more in my life, and I want to do it with other people that are there to help me. And most of the franchisors, that's the spirit they come from. They get jazzed about seeing people break records and live their dreams and accomplish those goals.
I love that.
Yeah.
It's funny. I'll tell you a quick story, and then I know we gotta wrap this up. I'm having a great time talking with you, and but I wanted to tell you, it's funny. I call him a kid. He's not really a kid. He's 25 years old. Reached out to me. A fascinating story, and he graduated college, had a real nice job, high paying job with great prospects. It was like a consulting type job in Chicago, and he just kind of decided he really wanted to get into franchising, wanted to eventually own a bunch of franchises, and somehow connected with a guy who happened to own, about 40 or 50 Popeyes franchises, but now was just more of an investor. He wasn't running the franchises. He had somebody else do that. And this guy said, you talk about, when the student's ready, the teacher will appear. This kid, his name's Matt. He said, listen, what do I need to do? And this guy said, listen, if you're really interested in getting into franchising, then you need to understand what it's all about. You need to quit your job, and you need to go work for a franchise that you think you're interested in. And when I say work for them, I mean you need to start as a cashier, and then you need to work your way up so you kind of understand what's going on in that model. Do that for a year, put together a small little business plan, and then come see me, and we'll talk about some potential opportunities in the future. And I'm telling he did it. He quit his job. He moved to Indiana. He lives with his aunt and uncle here in town, and he then contacted the owners of. There's a franchise called Zaxby's that's based out of Atlanta, and they just opened their first location here. And he basically told them that's his story. That's what he wanted to do. Of course, the owners were all jazzed about it. And he started as a cashier, very quickly moved up, and now he's in a supervisory management type of position. But I have no doubt that someone like that is going to be a huge success. But that's the kind of spirit that you got to have. I mean, that's the kind of drive that you got to have, and that's the kind of mentality is not I know everything, I'm going to go in and do this. It's let's rely on people who have been there before, who's sort of who are a picture of where you want to go, and let's figure out how do we make that happen. And I just love those kind of stories.
Oh boy, I'll tell you that's what it's all about. And the key, one of the key things that you brought out in that story that this young man did, he was willing to go to any length and to do what is not just to you can just say, hey, I'm going to do my best. That's not always good enough. Sometimes you have to do what is required.
I love that. Yeah, absolutely.
There's a difference. See, if he wanted to do his best, that may have not been good enough. This guy told him, quit your job and go work and learn all of the details in that. And I mean, let's face it, everything we do each day determines whether or not, it's kind of sad, but I've seen many people come along in their 40s or so, and they've had successful corporate careers, but they're so up to their neck in debt. They've got, debt with cars and credit cards and this and that and all this other stuff. They can't even, and you tell them, hey, we think you could be a good franchisee, but you need to sell your house, sell your cars, tell the kids that they're going to have to change college and go to a community college, give up the country club membership, and all of a sudden they walk out of there with their tail between their legs, because they realize that, the idea of just small business ownership is not a job. It's not the same as if you think that the paycheck's going to show up every couple of weeks because now you're a small business ownership and you're the boss. You've got another thing to think about. And that's when they talk about those failure and success rates with franchisors. See, good franchisors are screaming for all that stuff, right? I mean, I can't tell you the number of people that have phenomenal annual income, but they don't hardly have any money to do anything with. And so that's another thing for your listeners to think about here, is that if you think small business ownership is in your future, get your family together and get on a spending plan and cut out all the extra stuff, get rid of the debt, and position yourself, because that way you're giving yourself a chance. When you start a business, it's like giving birth. I realize neither you nor I, Josh, understand giving birth, so I won't offend any ladies out there. They're going to say, hey, you don't know anything about it. You're right, I don't. Okay. But I was in the room 3 times, and I saw a little bit of what happened in there, and it looked pretty painful to me. But starting that small business is like starting something from scratch. It's taking something and it's growing, and you've got to have the soil prepped, and you've got to have the right soil, and you've got to have the right time of year, and you've got to have some of those things that you can put the odds in your favor to be able to succeed and accomplish your goals. That's a great story that really emphasized that about this young man being willing to quit his job. He was serious about being in business for himself and accomplishing his life goals through small business ownership. And that said it, But yeah, great point.
No, that's great. I love the point on the parenting too. But I think what I would say about that, because I've got a couple daughters myself, and the thing is, just like in small business ownership, there's no parenting guidelines that you just kind of have to learn as you do. You got to pivot, you got to grow, and that's the hard thing about parenting, right? You have these decisions where sometimes you feel like the weight of the world is, am I going to screw up my kid? That's the biggest fear, and you just don't know. You just do the best. You just do the best you can. You try to learn from your mistakes, which you're gonna make, and you just move forward and do the best you can. So I really love that analogy. And listen, we have gone over. This has been a great conversation. I really appreciate your time. Maybe we'll do a part 2 of this sometime down the road. But tell people where they can get a hold of you, or what's the best way to contact you if they have questions or to learn more about what you're doing.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you, Josh. Well, I tell you what, I'm an open book. If somebody hears this and there's something, so many people have helped me. If I can help anybody, man, they can feel free. My cell phone number is area code 281-658-9409, 281-658-9409. And I'm going to put out my personal email address. It's Arthur Coley Jr. at yahoo.com. That's Arthur, ARTHUR, COLEYJR at yahoo.com. So any of your listeners, Josh, they don't have to hesitate 1 second. If they want to talk about franchising and small business ownership, I'm available for anybody.
Oh, thank you so much. And if you hear that, listeners, follow up, call them. this Art, you have a wealth of knowledge. 20 plus years, you've run a top 200 franchise. That's incredible. Thank you for being so generous. I look forward to staying in touch with you.
Absolutely, Josh. Thank you for what you do with your show and helping your listeners really just learn what franchising is about and make better decisions. We need more people doing what you're doing. Thank you, Josh.
Thanks for being with us today on the Franchise Euphoria podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to go to iTunes and provide a review. Also, please remember that although Josh Brown is a licensed and practicing attorney, nothing contained in this podcast should be construed as legal advice, because it is not. The information contained in this podcast is general and educational in nature, and none of it should be relied upon as legal advice. That being said, if you have questions for Josh and would like to contact him, please email him at josh@franchiseeuphoria.com. Thank you so much for listening, and we hope you tune in to our next weekly episode.